All right, my name is Maret Tekla Awaroon. I am the Director of Practice Innovation at Building Changes. I am calling in from Renton on the ancestral land of the Wamis, Muckleshoot, and Amatilla and Walla Walla. I'm going to introduce my colleagues, Jonathan and Gina.
Yeah, my name is Jonathan Houston. I'm the lead consultant on the HSSP RFP this year, and I'm calling in from Tacoma on the ancestral land of the Puyallup tribe.
Greetings. My name is Gina T. I use the she and the her pronoun. I'm a program manager with the Office of Homeless Youth within the Department of Commerce, and I'm joining you all from Olympia on the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Nisqually and Squaxin. So, yeah, OHY has contracted Building Changes to initiate the Homeless Student Stability Program request for proposals this year. Once the apparent successful applicants are selected through a competitive review process, organizations will be contracted through Commerce and be provided an OHY grant manager. That's me. And we will serve as a point of contact for any requests for Commerce approval or any technical assistance folks may have in regards to contracting with state government. Building Changes will provide technical assistance for program-specific stuff, training, capacity building, services to grantees to support the program goals. Just wanted to clarify that distinction.
Thank you. So for today's agenda, we'll start with providing a background of information on our agencies, and I'll review on the Homeless Student Stability Program, which you'll hear us refer as the HSSP program. Then we'll review the request for proposal, including eligibility for the funding opportunity and the application process. This webinar is intended for any organization interested in applying for funding within Building Changes in the Office of Homeless Youth. We'll also reference it as OHY for the HSSP program. At the end, we'll have time to answer general questions about the RFP, but feel free to ask questions at any time, and you can also put it in the chat box. We will be compiling the questions to put the questions and answers, and we'll have it posted on our website early next week.
And so we would just want to make sure we acknowledge that we're grateful to the original inhabitants of this land upon which we gather and dialogue. We also acknowledge our increasingly virtual world in which Building Changes work is done across multiple Indigenous lands and in some cases away from Puget Salish territories. And so we want to thank the original caretakers of our local lands and waters and those who are not here, but those who are still here as well. And we want to honor the lives that have worked so hard for humanity.
And Jonathan, I see a question. Lori, I see your hand is risen.
Yeah, I just got a text from David De La Fuente from Canadian Schools. He says he's in the waiting room, waiting to be admitted.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Gina and or Jonathan, please admit him if you can.
Done.
Oh, he's in here.
Cool. Yeah, so as Marit had just stated with the agenda, we're hoping that this webinar will give folks, organizations who are interested in participating in this procurement process, or any organizations or groups who do not have experience with the BC procurement process, and specifically contracting with state government, because that can be a little precarious at times. And we'll get into some of those details later in the PowerPoint slide, but we'll be discussing the process, overview, content, eligibility, all of the good stuff, and hoping to provide answers to any questions folks may have. Next slide, please. The Office of Homeless Youth. So, yeah. OHY leads the statewide effort to reduce and prevent homelessness for youth and young adults by ensuring access to the following 5 priorities. Stable housing, and that means really that every young person has a safe and healthy place to sleep. Family reconciliation, and that is when safe and appropriate. as defined by the young person. Permanent connections, that youth and young adults have opportunities to establish positive, healthy relationships with peers and adults and everyone. Education and employment, that youth have opportunities to advance their education and or training to achieve and obtain employment. And lastly, social and emotional well-being, that youth and young folks have access to behavioral health and physical health services that nurture young people's strengths and abilities. Next slide, please. OHY is embedded in the Department of Commerce, which is a state agency growing rapidly that touches many aspects of community and economic development. Housing is a very large piece of that work, but not all of it. There's planning, infrastructure, energy, public facilities, public safety, crime victim advocacy, international trade, business services, and so much more. Commerce works with local governments, tribes, businesses, civic leaders throughout the state, and with the goal of strengthening communities. The budget, the dollars that are granted out comes from state legislature via the state biennial budget and from federal government through various grants and awards. Commerce manages all of the state's funding to address homelessness and affordable housing, including the construction of housing, rental assistance, and other aspects to support that that folks are housed. But all that being said, today we're focusing specifically on funding through the Office of Homeless Youth. Next slide, please. Thank you. So our guiding vision at OHY is that every family and youth in the state has individualized support that they need, so that no young person has to spend a single night without safe and stable housing. Every community has services that are equitable, accessible, effective, and responsive and coordinated. OHY funds a variety of programs that serve both unaccompanied minors, which are unemancipated youth under the age of 18 and are living without a parent or guardian, as well as young adults up to the age of 24 who are without a safe, stable housing arrangement. We're growing in many ways and have created a prevention kind of hub of our office, which is where the Homeless Student Stability Program lives. And OHY programs, all of the OHY programs allow funding for holistic care with outreach, referrals, support services, aftercare, and many other options that might not be explicitly outlined in the guidelines. I think, yeah, pass it on to one of my partners here.
I am muted. Okay. Some of you have heard of BC before and some may not, just in case. BC is a nonprofit working with and alongside communities across Washington State to explore the intersections of systems serving young people, students, and families experiencing homelessness. Some of our work involves funding innovative ideas, providing technical assistance and training, projects and program, research and evaluation, and advocacy effort that aims to change policies to strengthen implementation. Housing, education, and health systems significantly impact the lives of people experiencing homelessness, especially children, youth, and families. This is Building Change's statement on race equity. Our racial equity work does not stop here. We are committed to building an internal culture that challenges racism within our organization. Building Change is on a journey to be an anti-racist, multicultural organization, which is an organization that has in its mission, goals, values, and operating systems to explicit policies and practices that prohibits anyone from being excluded or unjustly treated because of race or any other social identity or status. Due to the historical and structural racism, Black, Indigenous, and people of color are more likely to experience housing crisis, education justice, and health inequities. At the same time, Black, Indigenous, and people of color lack equitable access to these systems and have unequal experiences when seeking supports and services. We have included this infographic to ensure we're centering our students furthest from education justice and access to resources and opportunities. 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color. This is why our focus on equity and targeting strategies to students of color is vital in stabilizing our McKinney-Vento population and will benefit all students. BC has committed to centering race equity internally and externally. We bring a targeted universal lens coined by John A. Powell of the Haas Institute at Berkeley. To our work, which acknowledges equity rather than equality, we no longer believe that everyone should receive the same level of support, but believe prioritizing the needs of those marginalized. By doing so, there is a universal benefit. This is why our focus on equity and targeting strategies for students is absolutely vital in stabilizing our McKinney-Vento population and will benefit all students. To be clear, this is not just about preference. It's about acknowledging that people are situated differently and have varying needs.
Let me unmute. So the Homeless Student Stability Program was established in 2016 to provide educational stability by promoting housing stability to students in the public K through 12 systems and their families experiencing homelessness, and it includes unaccompanied youth. So I'm going to try and put a link to the RCW for those of you who love that stuff. Oh, and I was able to multitask right now, so that's great. HSSP is intended to link both unaccompanied students and families that include homeless students to stable housing located in the student's school district. Homeless housing navigators from homeless service agency partners with school district staff, or McKinney-Vento liaisons to support students and their families with assistance to gain stable housing. The goal of this program is to promote better educational outcomes through housing stability. What makes this program so unique is that Washington State, I don't know if it makes the program unique or the state unique, but regardless, we're the only state in the union that has established a program like this, which is trailblazing and speaks volumes to building changes at work and advocacy in this area. So, and also prioritizing meeting the needs of students experiencing homelessness that under that HUD definition would not otherwise be eligible for services. I think I'm going to go to the next slide when you're ready. Cool. Yeah, so the intentions for the funding. I don't want to read the slide to you because it's a lot of words, but it's not an exhaustive, like everything that is allowable, right, isn't covered. But housing support services do include support funds or an ongoing assistance for the needs such as food or utilities used to support and maintain housing with a friend, relative, or host home while a program participant, rental assistance, specifically short-term rental assistance, 90 days or less, such as diversion, initial moving costs, rental arrears, utility arrears, emergency stays in hotels and motels, transportation, including gas, gift cards, taxis, bus, airline tickets, transportation associated with the goal for each individual, identification, document fees, education expenses, including GED testing, school IDs, all of that stuff, and to support outreach. But I'm going to try again to drop a link that kind of has a nice little visual for allowable expenses for support services that really are all of our programs. Cool.
All right, so this slide is going to touch on the amazing school housing partnership, the HSSP and the Homeless Student Support Education Program. So HSSP is through OSPI. Sorry, HSSEP is through OSPI. The funds are administered by two different agencies to create partnership between housing support services and school districts. And below you see the bullets that highlight the goals of both partnerships. I wanted to share and highlight, because we've gotten a couple of questions, and so I'm going to answer this really quickly. Applications for the grant program must include an MOU between a housing provider and school district, but that MOU is actually, you would submit that 60 days, if awarded, 60 days after your awarding letter. So I know that was like the $1 million question that a lot of our service providers had emailed and asked to see if it was part of the application requirement. The letter of support is part of the application requirement, but an MOU should be available to follow if awarded. The MOU must include how they'll address gaps and needs, develop sustainable strategies, and collect data. And I'm going to go to the next slide. Well, actually, I want to give a special shout out to our partnership with Longview School District. This infographic and another infographic that you're going to see was made possible by their McKinney-Vento department and their parents who are identified MKV or imminent homeless, part of a McKinney-Vento focus group on school engagement with their housing, transitional housing partnership. And so we do have this as a blank version, so we can drop the link if you want to adopt this slide or this infographic or another infographic. So just wanted to highlight how this partnership with the school district and housing provider and parents, an infographic came out of one of those projects.
And as Marit mentioned just a minute ago, that the HSSEP program is a grant that is an additional competitive grant opportunity, and it's available to increase districts' capacities to identify and support students experiencing homelessness. I saw Vivian Rogers-Decker on the Zoom, and so she's the one who supports that through OSBI. And this is the list of the grantees for the past cohort 2022-2024. And so if you're on this call and you see a district that you service students in that district, or you know that district, and you're like, hey, we're close to that district, please connect with that district, because the whole point of this program, both of the programs, is to build the school housing partnership so that the providers who have resources can connect with the schools who have families and students who need those resources, and they can really be served. I worked in school districts, and it's been very important to have partnership with the service providers to be able to write a referral for shelter stay. Just so many resources that are available that we don't have as school districts. So these are the OSPI grant recipients for 2022 to 2024. And just recently, they completed another cohort for the 23-24 cohort, which is new schools. It's an expansion. And so it's really nice to see so many school districts, even the charter schools are on there, a couple of charter schools, which is really a big deal for OSPI being responsive to the needs of all of the schools that are out there. And it's not just concentrated around the I-5 corridor. We really want to support all the schools throughout the state, but there's only so much funding. So this is a competitive process. If you're not familiar with Department of Ed homelessness, we're going to go to the next slide, and I want to just talk about the McKinney-Vento program. The McKinney-Vento program is it's based off the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, which is a federal law that ensures immediate enrollment and educational stability for students experiencing homelessness. And homelessness in the Department of Ed is identified. I see there's a question. I'll answer that in just a minute. It's identified by more than just what the Department of HUD identifies. Really, the definition is students who are experiencing homelessness are lacking a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. And of course, this includes things like shelters and motels and hotels and transitional housing, but it also includes students who are doubled up and not in their own housing. And so when you think about the students you may have traditionally served, if you were operating under the Department of HUD definition, this program, this funding, the HSSP funding, it kind of broadens the opportunity for folks to to serve students who are also doubled up, because it says households served by the program must include at least one student enrolled in the public K-12 system and meet the definition of homelessness as defined by the McKinney-Vento, including unaccompanied youth. And to understand that, if you want to understand that more, there's a link in the chat to the OSPI website, so you can get some training on that, but also connecting with your school McKinney-Vento liaison. They're going to be a great resource, actually necessary for you to have that partnership in MOU. And so just wanted to really help you to understand that the definition of McKinney-Vento is a lot broader than Department of HUD, and really want you to look into that if you don't know already.
Actually, really quickly, Jonathan, did you want to get to that question? I can't see the chat box, so I don't know if it's related to the slide.
Yes, it says, can you please clarify, we as a school district would be required to partner with the housing service provider. Through the HSSP grant, there's a requirement of an MOU with the school district. And so it doesn't have to be signed upon application, but upon contract, you have within 60 days to get that signed. So the housing service providers do have to work with the school districts. And there's more information on that in the RFP. Is that helpful, Lori?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess my question, yeah, that makes sense. It's just I don't know who are those housing agencies. I mean, myself and David De La Fuente with Communities and Schools were interested in applying for the grant, but his agency is not a housing service provider, so it doesn't sound like that would work for us to apply for this.
Lori,
Can I ask a quick question, Marat? Lori, what district are you in?
Kent School District.
You may have a partner and if you want to reach out to me, I'll be happy to help you get connected to your coordinated entry point or housing partner. And of course, you can reach out to Marat and Jonathan at Building Changes with that information as well.
Lori, similar to the pilot Schoolhouse Washington grant that you previously had, you can apply in that manner. I know that Communities and Schools does do wraparound services, may support like the liens, the evictions, the move-in costs, and things like that. I don't know if things have changed, but similar to what that partnership was previously, that would fit under this program requirement. At least from what I've gathered recently, I will say from what I've heard and seen that it would fit within the program requirements of partnering with a community-based organization.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't have to be somebody that specifically only targets housing, not a housing agency. Because I know like Highline School District connects with Neighborhood House.
Mm-hmm.
But again, David, and his team we're able to have staff that were able to use the Schoolhouse Washington funds more flexible than what we normally can use federal funds or state funds. The school district won't let me use funds to pay for hotels or do rental assistance or anything like that. So we do have to partner with an outside agency so they can use the funds that way. Yes. I just want to make sure these are allowable. It sounds like those are allowable expenses. I just want to make sure that we're not partnering and then find out, oh no, you can't partner with Communities and Schools.
You can't, because they provide housing services. They provide those hotel vouchers. They do the move-in costs, unless things have changed recently. They are doing, David and his team does that work in the wraparound services approach.
Excellent. Okay, that clears it up. Thank you.
Yeah. Mary, I see your hand raised.
Sorry, yeah, I guess it's just following up on Lori's comment. So if a community partner does not offer housing resources such as deposits or rent assistance or anything like specifically housing related, then they wouldn't qualify. Is that correct?
What would they be providing to ensure housing stability to the student and their family?
So they would be,
And that would be a question that you want to answer when you're
Right,
partnering with this
right.
organization. Is it like, do they offer several services? And is
yeah,
housing
it'd be
one of
like
them?
stabilizing unaccompanied youth, possibly like Vivian had said, in a doubled up situation that they've found for themselves. So maybe offering services to the families that are supporting those unaccompanied youth. That would be like one
Yes.
option.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's multiple options. So those strategies to stabilizing the unaccompanied youth's housing would require multiple strategies and approaches. So
Okay.
detailing that will be important and highlighting what that looks like in the practice and implementation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Gina, this is your slide, but do you want to chime in? Yeah.
Yeah, and so program requirements slide touches a little bit on like what is required for the program. We'll also get into like a very high level minimum eligibility requirement later on. And that is specified by like contracting within commerce and like RCW. But outside of that, I would not advise adding additional requirements and just kind of like making your case in your RFP. But I don't want to get too far out of my lane. I will talk about my slide number 17 here. Program requirements. So folks should be aware of all requirements if awarded funding. And this complete detail of activity and requirements for providers are found within the program guidelines. We have the fiscal year 22-23 guidelines posted on the OHY website and is linked through the actual application that Building Changes put together. I do want to state that we are actively working on a guideline revision that will be pertaining to this fiscal year that we are currently in. Reporting and evaluation. So these are some of those requirements in statute, right? Program data must be entered into the homeless management information system. Number of students and families served, length of time enrolled in the program, housing destination at program exit, type of residence prior to enrollment, and number of times homeless in the last 3 years. In addition to this like very data-driven quantitative approach to collecting information, it's also required that grantees provide a narrative which describes that partnership with the schools and the school districts and the quantity and type of supports offered to promote that academic learning. And that's one of those things that Building Changes will work and survey grantees through this funding cycle and support. And then kind of on top of that, with the passing of House Bill 1622 in this last session, it is now required, as we said previously, and we'll say again, because it's important, the applicants include that letter of support from school districts. I know there was a question about recommendations on the amount of letters of support, and I think that like the minimum is 1. If there is a lot of relationship and school support, I would think it would be good to have that reflected in the application. I don't know if there's a max. That would be a question for Marette and the folks reviewing applications, but that and the MOU, as mentioned, that's 60 days. 60 days from receiving notification of grant award. And I think we covered what that entails. But if folks are having a hard time establishing that very formal piece of documentation that is important and required, please know that you can work with your program manager at Commerce to come up with a plan in lieu of having that by that very concrete deadline as directed in statute. But that communication is crucial, and it should be communication with not just the housing provider, but the schools too. Oh, and lastly, the contract template, which is also linked into the application. It's just a draft. There's a bunch of terms and conditions and commerce legalese that has other additional requirements regarding insurance. Folks should just be aware of that. I think, next slide.
I just, Gina, I wanted to chime in on the reporting evaluation, and for our community-based organizations, if you're reading, reporting must include a narrative that describes the partnership with schools, school districts, and the quantity and types of support offered to promote academic learning. One thing that we're adopting instead of using academic learning is education enrichment activities, which is what you'll see in the applications, and there are examples of that. So when you're thinking about academic learning, tutoring, life skills, workforce development, entrepreneur skills, economic mobility, it's very broad and not just like situated to the academic learning in the classroom, but beyond that for them to be successful. And so there are examples of what that can look like, but also we want to hear your own innovative ideas and programs across the way. So.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question here? Letter of support from the school. So if this is your first time to write this RFP to implement this grant, how do you get that? I think it might be easy for people that have a relationship with the schools. They can easily get a letter of support to say that ABC have done ABC and they know you and kind of recommend you for whatever needs to be done. But if this is the first time you're doing this, how would you get that? And also, I'm still trying to understand the connections between the RFP and the school, who plays what role, especially when it comes to budgeting and implementation. To what extent is there a fine line between the organization that implements the grant, the school, and the school district? And to say all that, I hope that the RFP materials have all these things kind of clearly outlined, so that when we go back and look at it, that can help us guide us through the process.
I can answer. If you already have an existing relationship, asking the school principal, the director of community engagement, whether it's the school building or the district office, for a letter of support, sometimes even offering them, if you already have that relationship, offering them a template that they can utilize and then, create what the partnership has been. If you don't have a partnership or an existing one, you might want to start having that conversation now, especially if you are providing services to students in that school district or the neighboring school building or whatever it may be, fostering that relationship with someone, because you only really need one requirement of a letter of support. And so it'd be really important to have some school building or school district representation create that for you. They are very busy, so that's why I'm always like a template stating what your existing partnerships and opportunities are, and a little bit about the RFP. Now, to separate the two, this RFP is just for the community-based organization. So the budget, auditing, all of that is on the ownership and responsibility of the community-based organization. Referrals, strengthening that school housing partnership, being a part of school building events, whether it's like open house, resources, holiday giveaways, highlighting that is really important, but that is not that is what you're highlighting as your partnership with the school building. And so that's your ownership. This RFP is on the community-based, spotlight on a community-based organization and your part in this ecosystem. Some of the other questions you asked, we're going to actually go into it. And so feel free to ask again if I didn't get to it, but I felt like those were two really important things to highlight about the letter of support. If you do not have an existing relationship, but you're providing services to each other's students, scholars, families, it's important to start having that conversation with whoever your key person is, a school counselor, social worker, family support liaison, whatever that may be. Start engaging in that conversation because it will be needed for that application process.
Yeah, we run an after school and summer camp schools program through SOA, the schools out Washington. How will these two things link together in terms of having linking up with the school system? I mean, from your experience.
Can you hold that question for the end? And that way we can probably network and get through that.
So, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, this is rich with questions, and that's wonderful. This has not quite been in such an active webinar, so loving this. Eligible applicants. So in addition to the program requirements mentioned previously, minimum eligibility qualifications when contracting with state government is that an applicant must be licensed to do business in the state of Washington or submit a statement of commitment that it will become licensed in Washington within 30 days of being selected as an apparent successful contractor. And that's a big one. Just state dollars. Statute that RCW 43185 defines eligible organization as any local government, local housing authority, behavioral health administrative service organization, behavioral health org, nonprofit, community, or non-neighborhood based organization, federally recognized Indian tribe in the state of Washington, or regional or state-wide nonprofit housing assistant organization. So if your organization hits those two bullets, then yeah, that's kind of the minimal. Another fun fact with contracting with commerce and state government is that this is more pertains to those who have been awarded funding, but I think it's important to stay up front because it can create a barrier for even applying for funding. But contracting, grantees are paid through monthly reimbursements, and that's a thing. So like the expectation is that organizations are like fronting that cost and then requesting reimbursement after the fact. And then they have to do so through our online invoicing system, which we call CMS, Contract Management System, in order to request that official funding reimbursement. And it's accessed through the Office of Financial Management. And we say monthly, but it can be more frequent than monthly if that is a barrier. It is important that we are doing it as a reimbursement, but like I think there is room to support folks where they're at. I think that's that.
I got a question, but I wasn't sure.
Well, I was just going to talk a little about what you just said, which is very important, the invoicing for small organizations who are barely, surviving.
Mhm.
I mean, and they have a very good track record of making great impact in the community and want to be involved in this. The reimbursement process may be an obstacle. So having an alternative of doing it otherwise, presenting deliverables and getting reimbursed prior to implementation might help. If not, it might be a barrier to people that want to participate in this, but their covers are not full. So they are living on a month-to-month basis, or they are surviving based on the little they have. So if it is strictly the reimbursement, that might be a problem. So I hope the alternative to reverse that is well in place to make sure that such organizations are kind of supported.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that with eloquence. And yeah, that's just a situation where you would reach out to the commerce contract manager, and start that conversation sooner than later, maybe even during like the contract negotiation period. But yeah, we're definitely here to support getting these services out there.
Thank you.
I think David has his hand raised. David Belafonte.
Thank you, Marat. I really appreciate your sensitivity to the question that Mamadou just asked. And I was wondering if while I understand that for money that's federal in nature on the back end, that a reimbursement process is a requirement, typically, that there's not a lot of flexibility on. But I wonder if perhaps, some of the administrative costs or something like that couldn't be front loaded to help smaller organizations navigate some of the money that would be going out the door right away for direct services as well. So I'm just trying to be a little bit creative about what might be allowable, because I have a feeling we're probably not going to get very far on the reimbursement question. Not to be negative there, Mamadou. That's just been my experience from having asked that question many times with federal money.
Oh,
So I'm wondering if there's other ways that we can front load it that might be allowable.
for sure,
Yeah.
David.
Rad. So these are state funding, which also has that reimbursement requirement through Commerce currently. That being said, a part of the RFP material the building changes put out is a budget proposal, or like folks will submit a spending plan. And it kind of breaks it down by category, but there's also a narrative section there. And I think it would behoove folks to state clearly like what startup costs would look like for these administrative fees. And I think that's the appropriate channel for addressing those needs that smaller organizations may have.
Kevin has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I want to be the brave third voice and take a third lap around what these two gentlemen have talked about, because specifically when we're talking about small agencies and small organizations investing even the time to do an application like this, right? I mean, this is going to be hours and hours for folks, especially when we're understaffed and things like that, of that nature. As Washington, you already mentioned, Gina, that Washington is already on the forefront of doing applications and processes like this. I too have been part of conversations where, hey, reach out to your representative, reach out to your help and try and work this thing out. But if there is no option for getting pre-funded or to somehow get over the reimbursement process, it's not worth the time to invest in doing the application. Right. So I don't know if it's in time to do this right now, but certainly on the next application, there are clearly stated options for if you are of a certain budget size or a certain staff size, we will front end load 20% of the contract. And that's the first 20% that you don't get reimbursed for, or you don't have to submit for reimbursements for. So I don't know I don't know what the solution is, but this is a really, really important piece. And I recognize federal funding, I recognize state funding, I recognize county funding. It's all on a reimbursement process, but that's the kind of thing that's difficult. Building Changes in the past has done significantly smaller grants where they front end load. They say, hey, $10,000 here you go, $20,000 here you go for whatever it is. And then the report comes later. I don't know if there's that kind of flexibility on this funding, but it is certainly something, with Washington on the forefront of even offering this, can be on the forefront of how do we do this for especially our smaller agencies and smaller organizations. So it's just a comment, it's not a question, but I just want to give out that brave third voice to questions that are difficult to ask. So
It's a great comment, Kevin.
Thank you for that. I want to share, if it was mine and Gina's money, we would front load it. So we're appreciating all the boldness in this conversation, and it is our goal to champion and advocate for you all. Definitely know for smaller grassroots organizations how hard it is to request for those reimbursements from government. So we will be compiling all these questions. We won't have an answer too soon for you all, but it is something that we can discuss and see what opportunities can change or be nimble for a January 15th contract start date. I am going to segue in, unless we have other questions on this matter or other questions around eligible applications. Okay. All right, so the performance period for this funding opportunity, the contract start date is January 15th, 2024 through January 30th, 2025, so about 18 months. Individual projects can be budgeted up to, but no more than $200,000 for the grant period. So pretty much we'll be dispersing the full pot will be $1.4 million, about $1.4 million. And so from there, we'll be dispersing that to different organizations. This is an estimated schedule of procurement activities. Again, this is estimate. So far, we are on track and things look good, but we do know life happens, pandemic happens. Crazy things are happening. So hopefully those things don't impact the schedule, but it's really important to just highlight that it's estimated and that we're nimble with some of these opportunities. And so our application went live October 25th. It is on the Building Changes website. All communications regarding the RFP must be emailed to the HSSP website. We will share that if you have a question, put question on the subject heading. And if you're submitting the actual application, we'll ask you to submit on the subject, like submit RFP, so we can separate the applications from the questions. Applications are due no later than Tuesday, December 5th at 5 p.m. Please note that this is a hard deadline. We'll notify a parent successful contractor of the selection in email upon the review. After the review, the community review panel has gone through their selection committee. If you are not selected for the negotiation, we will notify you and just letting you know. An opportunity to receive feedback or debriefing will be available. And there's also an opportunity to appeal, but hopefully we won't need that, but there will be opportunity to cover that. This is really important to highlight. This is please make sure all parts of the application is complete, utilizing this checklist. Remembering that the letter of support must be attached, all those required exhibits, the budget sheet, all of those certificates and inclusion plans. Yeah, we have those links attached to it. Yeah. And we can answer any questions if you have concerns around the funding application or even the universal program questions. The next slide will cover, we are doing things very different. Historically, only written application responses have been accepted for this funding opportunity. To expand submission options and also to be accessible, we are now accepting video submissions through Vimeo or YouTube for responses to the universal program question. Now, I do want to highlight, it's an either or. You're either writing the questions and utilizing the 250 word limit per response, or you have an option of submitting a video submission so there's a two-part question. Each one can no longer be longer than 14 minutes total. So a total of 30 minutes because there's two separate questions. So any questions on that? On the application, there is a page 9 that highlights the RFP document for video submission instructions. Something will also drop the link, but I just really want it to be clear. It's an either or, not both. If you want to do both and get really detailed on all the amazing work that your students and communities are doing across Washington State, we would love to see it and hear it, but it is not required to submit both. So it's either the written portion or a video submission. Images, things like that are also welcomed.
Can I ask a question there? Can you, depending on the question, can you answer some question in narrative forms and answer other questions using audio video? Can you do that?
You can. You can do that.
That's yes, right?
Yes, it can be done. Just remember the word count per question and the total minutes for the video submission.
A word count is
Yeah. So
let me-
250 word limit per response to each question, and 14 minutes total for answering the question on this page. And then there's a second page that has a list of questions, and that is also 14 minutes. So your video should not be, yeah, it shouldn't be too long.
right. The letters of support and the references. I mean, I'm trying to see how similar or how different they are. When the letter of support, you get it from the school. The reference, can you get it from other organizations that you have implemented
Yes.
grants for?
Yes,
Okay,
other
good.
partnerships, other organizations, help, like whatever that partnership may look
Okay.
like.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Kevin, I see
That
your
helps.
hands raised.
Yes, Marat, thank you. I'm trying to understand what because you had said it's either or, which I understand, because then it seems like that's an equitable application process across the line. But I think I also heard you say if you want to do both, you can. Well, frankly, I mean, I could do that because I'm in the job of trying to get funding for our programs. But wouldn't that put somebody that does both an application and a video at an advantage? Because I could give 250 word responses to each one of these questions and then do 14 minutes of just building on what I've already done that would really make an application look a lot better. And in a competitive position, I don't know if right, do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm trying to really make this as equitable as possible.
It would be either or, but what Mamadou's question was, if I answered some questions in writing and some in a visual, he wouldn't get the full 14 minutes for the video to answer question 5 or 6. He would have to minimize his minutes. That is for the qualification.
So it sounds like it would be is 2 minutes or 250 words per question, right?
Sure. Yes.
So I think that making that clear is actually easier, because you know what, I might be able to do a better 2-minute job on question 6, but a better 250 word response on question 3. So that makes a lot more sense. That makes more sense. So,
and if you are someone that does both, we will most likely only score 1, not both.
Okay.
So our review panels will not be reading and viewing your video. It would be one or the other that will be scored.
Got it. Wonderful. Thank you.
I think that's a very important comment that you just made. Tickler, something like that. If you answer a question with a narrative and you add links on them, because you do a lot of that, you add links to support your narrative. Is that acceptable too?
What are the links to?
Well, the links is about let's say you said like when you go to college, you write and you go you write an essay and you do quotations and you cite your reference. So it's about what we write about. If we say we took part in the COVID vaccine campaigns, and we put a link to
show the image,
what we did, to show the image, and also part of the outreach materials we presented and stuff like that. So it's actually a support to the narrative. And a lot of time we do that because some people don't even have time to read. They just want to go to the link and click it, and it tells you actually what this company have done. So it's kind of helping the narrative.
Yeah,
and
so
we've done a lot in the past.
Yeah, if you're gonna have a link, a hyperlink, make sure it's an active link towards the image and that you specify it's an image and not a video. Because if you're providing a link towards an event that you carry and it's a video, we may assume that video is your response. But if it's just a picture that shows the proof, just so we can get, again, a little bit more of the story of what is happening and what is needed, just let us know that pictures, links here. But understanding that if one of the links are a video and you also submit a video in your response, it will be less, your time will be less. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm kind of worried about it because a lot of times you write something and you went to an event, you describe the event. It was a school giveaway, back to school giveaway, and you attend the back to school. You write a report about it, and you put a link just to show somebody the process, who was there, and what happened. So I mean, those things should be able to go together. So are we saying that they cannot, or are we saying they can go together?
They could. If I just want you to know that those links should be images, like pictures, But if the links are a video, then it will take away from your response, allowable minutes towards the response. So make sure the links are just pictures. Like you specify, we did this event. Here's our image or picture of the event.
Really? I mean,
But we
Well, it
welcome
can be-
images. The images are
it can-
welcome.
cannot be video.
Well, if you add video of the event, it will take away the minutes of your response if you're using video towards your application response. Does that make sense?
What do you mean it's going to reduce your minutes? What are you talking
So
about?
you only get 14 minutes total for video submission if you're using video submission to respond to these questions. So if
I
you
see.
share a video of an event and that video is 1 minute, now you only have 13 minutes available to answer the questions.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Joseph, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm headed.
Hi.
Thank you. Hi. So my name is Joseph. I support a few Pacific Islander and Black-led organizations that are really from communities that are most impacted, and have formally formed due to a lot of the COVID stuff, right? And so talking about organizations that don't have the years of capacity that a lot of the more traditional youth organizations have, that might not best support most impacted communities, but might have more passion and more connection to community. My sort of feedback, or just I guess comments, is that I'm hoping that this process are elevating communities that are now forming, right? That are new, but are people from those communities with lived experience. And so I find it really hard, because a lot of the youth, our youth serving RFPs out there are really privileging organizations that are often white-led, white-formed, and have HMIS systems in place. And so just wondering, like, how, I guess, how do we lift up youth serving organizations that are from communities that are most impacted, that often are not very strong at following the nonprofit industrial complex, but are really trying to get money to where money needs to go, which is to our young people that are suffering within the schools and are not being served appropriately. And then when I say that, I'm talking about Black, Native, Latino, Pacific Islander youth that are left behind in our systems. And so just wanted to make that comment.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Joseph. And actually, you brought several good points. One thing that I do want to highlight is HMIS, not having access now to HMIS is not part of the requirement. If you are awarded and chosen, you will get to go through that training process and access. Your organization will be that will be part of the infrastructure capacity building. And so that is not like a ding that you don't have access to HMIS or any of those data tracking systems. That is a part of the bridging that we will do. We'll make sure that training is offered to the different organizations that need it. And I do want to highlight, in the application, we want to understand what your program, who, what, and where, and telling a story. We are not looking for a well-polished grant writer who's going to tell us what we think we want to hear. We're going to have a group of community review panels, which this next slide, Jonathan will break down. There are 3 different pods who will be reviewing grants in a pre-assigned group in a different manner, weighing the applications differently. Geographic diversity across the state will be one. People of color-led organizations, student advocates, there'll be a lot of things that are going to be considered a part of the scoring rubric for our community review panels. So we're definitely taking that into consideration, and that is why we are having a community review panel review. They will know best Some of it will be OSPI district partners reviewing your application. Some of it will be community partners and lived experience subject matter experts, and others will be part of the BC Building Changes Network, so internal staff and consultants. And so just for the sake of time, we're gonna just go into the slide. So I'm gonna kick it over to Jonathan just so we can have a fair amount of time for just open questions.
For sure. And yeah, Marat covered a lot of this, but I would just encourage you to tell your story and why you are that organization, because you are right. You hit it on the head. We do want to be supporting the students who are Black, Indigenous, and other students of color who our Native students, our Pacific Islanders. We want to support our LGBTQIA plus community. We want to support our students who aren't getting access, but we know are being harmed most by the system. So if you can speak to that, that would be helpful. And as she said, there will be three different groups who will review. We'll have about 11 days to review. And so making sure your story is told well is going to be important. So I think I'm glad you mentioned those things. If we can go to the next slide. So we'll prioritize the funds for organizations who demonstrate a commitment to developing and implementing evidence-informed strategies to address inequities. Some specific strategies may include, but aren't limited to, hiring direct service staff who reflect the racial, cultural, and language demographics of population being served. So if you're in the communities and you know the community, you're connected to the community, those relationships are going to be important. Also, we'll look at those who are committing to inclusive programming by intentionally seeking and utilizing input from the population being served. So as you spoke to that lived experience, how is that lived experience being celebrated and elevated so that we can support the students who are impacted the most? And then also ensuring eligibility criteria does not unintentionally screen out people of color or further racial or make further gaps in racial inequity. And also ensuring prioritization criteria takes into account the experiences of youth and family of color, and creating access points and locations frequented by parents, guardians, and unaccompanied homeless youth of color. And so we really want to ensure equity is happening, and not just surface level, not just optic equity, but equity that's happening at the community level, because you're in the community and you know your community. Marat, this next.
I'm going to go through this because it's a lot of words. This is also written in the RFP, but we do have a robust appeal option. And if you have any concerns or needs for an appeal, that will be submitted through Building Changes. And so all of this information on the application, I'm going to go through a couple slides so we can have enough time to answer questions, because it looks like there's questions that want to be answered, but there is a robust appeal process and a debriefing feedback opportunity. It's part of that estimated schedule of window of when you can ask for feedback and appeal. And we also hope we can continue partnerships beyond. So if you are not awarded, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue a partnership or what other opportunities for fundings could be. We do have, shameless plug, Washington Youth and Family Fund that will be kicking off in early Q1, and they'll be for youth and young adults and also for families. It's two separate demographics, and so that will be kicking off. So just a little shameless plug for another grant opportunity that will be kicking down in the new year, kicking up in the new year. Mary, do you have a question?
I do, yes. So I'm curious, as the total maximum amount is 200,000, but for organizations that are in like small rural areas, is there not a limited amount, but like what are the thoughts around smaller organizations in rural districts compared to the larger districts in terms of asking for funds? Did that make sense?
So yeah. So we are not funding school districts. We are just funding community-based organizations. We're funding, the max you can be awarded is 200,000. In past grant applications, we've had organizations request a smaller amount because they may not need that huge amount given wherever they're at or whatever the activity is funding. And so we're just mindful that maybe not everyone needs 200,000. We've also seen that some community-based organizations are underspent and has actually shared this was actually more money than we can actually disperse. And that's needed. And so it's more of like being mindful of what your needs are and some buffer, but do not feel obligated to request for the full 200 if you don't really have the capacity for to manage a $200,000 budget. If your needs are high, but the capacity may not be there, the infrastructure may not be there. So the max you can apply is for 200,000. But if you're someone, we've had past grants apply for just 50,000, 75,000, maybe to fund a program, a staff of a program that's already existing. It will look different for different organizations. Some larger agencies have actually applied for smaller funds to just kind of keep a program running. And what their shortfalls might be and what they need to make it whole. And so not everyone may need that 200,000, may not apply for that. And so it won't actually matter. We won't weigh that based off of that. What we will weigh is if you look like you may be over capacity for the size of your organization, if you're reaching for the stars, it's great. We want to see that, but also being really honest about what it actually takes to disperse that, because we are working with organizations who are underspent, understaffed, and who took on more than they can actually chew.
Understood. Thank you so much. One more question. So if you were to win the award, you'd have to do HMIS?
Yes.
Okay.
And you'll have to do it, and you'll have access, and you'll be trained and access to utilizing the data capturing and requirements.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Joseph.
Yeah. Thanks, Meredith. So one of the biggest needs that we have with our most impacted young people right now that are McKinney-Vento is they don't have any access to client support dollars. And I know for reimbursement based RFP that might be harder for a small organization. And so I don't know if Building Changes is open to, if we identify young people with significant needs and we want to write a check specifically to that young person, if there's a way to sort of front, like client support dollars, if client support dollars is part of this program, and if not, then forget the question. But like getting like $250 to $500 to a young person, that needs that resource right away is a critical thing that I think our organization would really support, and organizations that I work with would really support.
To answer the question, the client need dollars is an allowable usage. What I hear is the barrier is that reimbursement time, that smaller organizations may not have access to that pot of money as quickly as the demands are coming. And we acknowledge that barrier and how that creates hardships. And that's some of the things that we're going to have a conversation. That is above Building Changes. That is more of a commerce rule for this program, for HSSP specifically. And some of the other grants that Building Changes pushes out, we're usually a lot more nimble in how we can support those services and the allowable uses. And so Gina, I don't know if you have examples of other organizations. It sounds like some folks may need more of like that cash advance and not always needing that reimbursement and what those opportunities might look like. Is that correct, Joseph? Is that something you're saying? Like if we are running through dollars quicker than what we have in our reimbursement pot, what are ways to get more of the funding that we've been awarded?
Yeah. I know for example, with the community restorative pathways with King County, there's the county sort of is able to front like a check to young people if the organization doesn't necessarily have the dollars to do that, to do that upfront cash. And so that was an option that the institution offered. And I don't know if that's, something that Building Changes, has considered before as an intermediary for the dollars. But it might be that they would have to commit dollars from anyways. Long question, but the idea behind it is how do we remove barriers to getting young people the money right away. And I know small organizations don't necessarily have that ability, and often will wait for months, to to be able to do that for an identified need that might be on a service plan for a young person.
I'll add to that, Building Changes does do that for our grantees. We do try to eliminate barriers to organizations like providing services to their clients, especially right now needs. I think the difference is that, and this is more of a question for Gina, on adopting a policy similar to King County's practice over at OHY and what that can look like. And maybe one exists, I don't know. I'm usually not this front facing with our RFP, but Gina might have a response to that because they do have several youth grant opportunities right now. And so it may be something that they have changed. I'm not sure.
Yeah, all of the funding coming through state dollars, administered through Commerce and OHY are based on reimbursement, and that is not cool. Like, everyone is identified. I think my buddy and colleague Viv and I were private chatting and kind of talking about the idea of this possibly being something that advocacy at the legislative level, based on the stuff that we are hearing in the concern that's being brought forth at this webinar. But I don't know if that answers the question or provides any hope. But one of the cool things about this dynamic with OSPI, OHY, Building Changes is state agency is very restricted in a lot of ways and what we can even advocate for. And the reason HSSP exists is because Building Changes was, able to do this on another level. And I see you, Viv. What's up?
Sorry, Vivian, can we wrap up this portion? We only got one more slide and then I can stop sharing so we can all see each other. I'm just gonna have Jonathan close out. This is the last slide and then we can jump right into several questions and discussions.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm here to support assistance with completing the application. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, submit any questions with at the HSSP Building Changes email address. But submit your proposals there as well. But remember to put question or submit. But I'm here to support. We want to help you be successful and so serving our students. And so that's why we're here. So please don't feel shy to reach out, but understand that we're here to serve.
All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see all you beautiful faces. See who's all in the room. Awesome. All right, let's get into questions.
I have a quick question here. If a student and his family, because we have cultural barriers, they prefer to go to put up with a family, an uncle or a relative instead of going to a provided housing. And I know we talked about rental assistance and arrears payment. How do we make this payment? Do we pay to, if a student decides to come and move with an uncle, do we pay rent or whatever needs to be paid to the uncle? And how do you account for that?
Something that you as an organization would make a determination. I'd be open to hear other organizations on how they provide that to their grantees. I will say that we do, if you're awarded, we do learning circles. So we strategize on barriers and opportunities for partnerships and ways that we can fund. If you're asking, does these funds allow that? Yes, it does. The specifics, I don't know that I can answer for you in this setting. I think it'd be more of like a research and connecting with our current cohort on what they've been doing.
Well, I mean, this is directly in terms of Commerce or whoever is rolling out the RFP. If uncle requires that the student and his family that's putting up with them for a year or 6 months to pay rent to them, I mean, how does that? This is just this is an invoicing process. How does it work? Do you pay to them, or do you guys provide other guidelines that payment is done?
Nina, do you want to take that? Because I think my understanding is when they submit their narrative reports and their quarter reports is when they get reimbursed the dollars. So
Like
they should already
who,
have the fund to be able to disperse that themselves.
who do you make the payment to?
Can I
Yeah,
chime in here?
Yeah.
I think one thing that would be helpful is to maybe share some of the existing HSSP recipients who might be willing to answer questions about how this works in their agency with some of the individuals who are participating, because they would be better able to share with you how they navigate that process of reimbursement that you're asking. One of the things I wanted to mention, a couple of districts have asked me, because it's not completely clear, that this, can districts apply? This is not a school district grant. There are two grants. HSSP through the Office of Homeless Youth and Commerce that is being contracted by Building Changes is the one that you are hearing about right now. There is a grant to school districts that has an E in it. It's the HSSEP grant. That's the education grant. Those are grants to districts. Now, those grants have already been awarded for this year. However, there will be a new grant cycle for districts to apply for in May that will be awarded for the 2025 school year. So do keep that in mind. But I just want to answer that to the districts that are in the room. If you are a district and you are wanting to get this into your community, you should identify a community partner who meets, I'm going to just take this from the what Building Changes put out, and the Office of Homeless Youth, the eligible applicants. So look at that list of eligible applicants and determine, do you fall somewhere on that list of eligible applicants? So I just really wanted to make sure I kind of put that out there, Marette, because some people are emailing me who were actually in this meeting or have messaged me and said, hey, can we apply? So I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you.
There was a question that we got, Vivian, in our mailbox, which I think Gina and I sort of got the answer about education service districts applying as a local agency because they wouldn't qualify for HSEP. So I think they would be the only exception, correct? The education service districts, the 9.
Yeah, I mean, if y'all will recognize them as, they're not technically they're not a district, they're not a non-for-profit. So yeah, that might be possible. It's really going to be up to Commerce and the Office of Homeless Youth to make the decision of whether they would be an eligible applicant. What I also want to say, as someone who has run a small nonprofit, I've started shelters and day centers. One of the things I had to do, because I know how hard that question of reimbursement, how hard it is to get reimbursement, is that I would often work with smaller foundations who have private funding, and I would use that private funding to do some of this front loading stuff that you're asking for in order to be able to pay for something and then be able to submit a reimbursement for it. But you do have to be mindful when you do that with state dollars that you are not supplanting something. So there is a little bit of that. That's more of a federal issue than it is a state issue, though.
Thank you, Vivian. I want to go through the questions. I see Laura, nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Jessica, you'll be next, and then Brian right after.
Thank you, Marette. I actually just wanted to offer something to Momadou and anyone else that had concerns about paying out to those that are leasing, renting from a household member or whomever. So something that we do on our end when we do things like this is we really are just looking to make sure that we have sufficient documentation in the event that we get audited, right? Because with government dollars, government funding, there is a chance you're going to get audited and they're going to ask you for specific things. So we kind of follow the same idea as if this were an actual leasee and leaseor. So if the family member is renting out a room or part of the home or whatever to their family member, we would ask for some kind of formal lease stating that they are leasing this part of the home, these rooms to these people. This is how much they are charging per month. These are the utilities that they share and any other rulings that they might have. And there are templates for that are available, right? That they can do. On top of that, we also ask for some kind of running rent ledger. It could be something they keep on an Excel file, or it could be something formal, just showing that, yeah, they actually do live with us. They've been paying us for this amount of time, but unfortunately at this time, they're not unable, and then they would show that as their balance. And then at the end of all of that, the last thing that we always ask for is, well, if we are going to be paying to a private landlord, because in that case, that's what they would be, we would request a W-9, because most of this money is above 500, right? And so because of that, W-9s are required for tax purposes. And if they can provide all of that, then we feel so much better about giving the state funding or whatever government funding it is, because if it does come back to us, we as an organization can say we did our due diligence and the money went exactly to whom or where it needed to go to at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent
Oh.
explanation. The only question that I have there, since it
Oh.
was addressed to me, is some apartment. If it is an apartment, some apartments will not allow you to sublease to somebody. You sign a lease, and one of the family members wants to come and live with you, as you explained or as I asked. Some apartment will not allow you to sublease. So I'm just trying to see how do you navigate that?
Actually, sorry, Mamadou and Laura, do you guys mind connecting? I just want to get
Yeah,
through
I was going to
Jessica.
offer that. Yeah, I was going to offer that to Mom and Dad. I will private message you on Zoom my contact information, and you can reach out to me.
And Mamadou, we'll drop our email on there, and you can ask me, Jonathan, or I. I just want to get through Jessica, Brian, and Chris's questions while their hands are up. Jessica.
Good.
Yeah, I had a quick question on the application budget. For columns H and I, I'm wondering what you're looking for there, with total requested funding max and then a total requested funding minimum. And then my second question is on the budget narrative. It talks about the starting pay for entry level and then the highest pay. And I'm wondering, if you're a part of a large organization, are you looking for the difference between like a housing case manager and the executive director, or more within the department and program of like a housing case manager and the department director?
That would actually be a question you want to ask your accounting or HR. It's whoever is in the title of the lowest paid salary or hourly wage, and whoever is the highest, and it's actually always not, it's sometimes the CFO, not necessarily the executive director. That will also highlight some pay inequities that may be occurring. And so that's a question you would have to ask your agency. It's not that we're asking those positions, but we don't know who is on the lower range of salary pay at your agency. We don't know who is at the highest. We want to see what that range looks like. You asked a question around the application, but I don't know if I understood the question around the budget, low and the maximum and the minimum.
Yeah, we're just kind of confused on what you're all looking for with what's the difference between the maximum and the minimum? What are we going to be putting in those columns? Like what we are hoping for, but what we absolutely need? Is that what you're looking for?
Give or take. Yeah. Gina, you look like you're ready to answer.
I mean, I think, yeah, the big difference is like the minimum amount required to operate versus how much you really need. And I think that is an important distinction. And again, just utilizing the narrative section of the budget for any things that might be specific to like a region you might be in when talking about pay inequity and like different levels. I think there's a lot that factors into that stuff, but there's definitely opportunity to explain. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
All right, we have Brian from Rod's House, and then Chris, and then Ben to follow.
Hey y'all, can you hear me? Good. Okay, great. My question is around the letters of support. In the RFP, it states that the letters need to come from school districts, and just wanted clarification that our letters of support, it wouldn't suffice for this application for letters of support to come from specific schools that we work closely with or we intend to work with, and or ESDs, so like education service districts. Letters from those would just be supplemental or additional, whereas what this grant is looking for is specifically from like the Yakima School District or other school districts in Yakima County.
No, it actually states under the requirement that the Homeless Student Stability Program, the letter of support, fund organization to develop partnership one or more school building and or school district or education service district. So the ESD could provide a letter of support. The school building could provide a letter of support. Okay. The central office of the school district can provide. The alternative program can provide a letter of support.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for this conversation today. It's really, really helpful. My question is, we serve clients across 2 counties, Snohomish and King counties, and so there are several school districts within that. And I'm wondering, do we need to pick a specific school or school district that we're partnering with, and then we can only serve under the contract, we can only serve students from that school or that school district? Or would we be able to serve, you know, if we had a kid in a different school district who became homeless, would we be able to serve them as well under this contract?
Provide the students and families at any time, all time. If your question is letter of support, that's up to you. The minimum is really just one. But in your application, if you're stating the specifics of we're working with Seattle Shoreline, Lenwood, and whoever is across that, we're also going to expect that when you do your narrative reports and any type of like capturing your activities, that we're also going to hear and see that you're highlighting that. So I just want to be mindful that capacity does change, staffing does change, but the expectation is like the activity will match your application at some point. And so it wouldn't hurt to have more letter of support to like show that. But we also know that there's a lot of organizations that provide students all over, and school buildings and school districts don't even know that that's what's bringing the kid to school and keeping them in school. And so that might be a hardship for organizations because school buildings don't even know that we exist. They don't even know where the reason the kid is coming to school and clothed and hunger, you know, all these things. And so that isn't going to be like an added point if you have more, but it does show what that strength in that partnership that exists. And I think you said one other thing, the MOU will be important. So if you're highlighting those school districts, when it does come to that MOU, yeah, you probably want to figure out where is the most capacity, where you're going to do that work. That doesn't mean that the other districts and the students in those other districts won't get served under this funding. You'll highlight that if awarded in your narrative reports, is that you're seeing that all of a sudden there's more services needed in the Snohomish side or on, you know, the island side or the King County side. So we know those things change because our families are high mobility and also transferring schools based off of their needs and supports.
Okay, thank you. That was really helpful.
Ben?
Thank you. Really briefly, I wanted to come back to the pay differential question. I wonder if it would be helpful for you all to publish the formula to use for that. This was confusing for us when we looked at it in some of the other OHY applications earlier this year. And I just, so I understand the sort of lack of clarity around it that people are expressing. And I understand what you're saying is we need to identify the highest paid and lowest paid in our organization. But I think if you could provide what the formula is, what we plug those into, I think that would help get some apples to apples comparisons across all the applications.
Great, I appreciate that need for clarity, and that makes a lot of sense. We are at 12:02. We definitely want to keep the conversation going, just probably not on this platform because a lot of us either have meetings or clients or just hopefully eating lunch. We do ask that you connect with Gina, myself, Mariah at Building Changes, Jonathan at Building Changes, or even Vivian at OSPI. We are strengthening our partnership and relationship. We talk often. So the more questions you ask them, we want to answer those and find out how might we get better in this process. We are a work in process, and systems change requires all of us to be a part of that process. So there's some ouches, but there's also some blooms down the line. So please continue to ask us those questions because it's things that we need to change and evolve so it's more accessible to providing services to the students and families. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. And thank you for those challenging questions and reminding us that legislative session is in a couple of months and we got some work to do. So thank you.